Now we're going to be looking deep into this QSimulator function. So I'm just going to expand QSimulator. The way I do it is Shift and Control and the plus button. So Control, Shift and plus will expand just that particular function. It will keep all the rest of them collapsed. So that's making it a lot more readable for me. Now, what has this author done? So every author of the script has their own way of writing the code. This particular author has chosen this particular format. We just need to understand and decipher how exactly this is written and what's happening over here. So the first thing, buyer number is equals to 0. A variable is set. Another variable queue length is set to 0. And there are going to be 3 variables, stats, tills, and buyer queue, which are going to be set based on the ResetDataStructure function's output. So what is this ResetDataStructure function? So let's have a look at that. Looking at this one, we can see this particular function, what it does, it creates a variable stats as a list of 10 zeros. Now let's try to break this down a little further. Max tills appears to be a constant or a variable which holds a particular integer, and when we hover over it, it surely enough shows that it's holding an integer of 5. So it's when we run this max tills plus 1, which is 5 plus 1, we get 6 in a range of 6. That is a for condition. This is a list comprehension iterating over each integer I in the generated range. So this is going to happen 6 number of times. It's going to create this particular list of 3 zeros 6 times and store it in this overall list. Similarly, max queue size is 30. When we click on it, you can see max queue size is a global variable or constant which is actually set outside of these functions and classes, and it's set to 30. And for 30 times queue node, what is this queue node function? When we trigger it, you can see that it's actually a class object. Queue node name is the name of the class. That object is set 30 times. So it's going to set 30 objects, queue node objects, and it's going to store it in the variable called buyer queue. So all of these reset data, essentially all the data variables which are starting with zeros and nulls, stats, tills, and buyers queues, is returned back by the reset data, and whatever is written in this particular sequence, stats, tills, buyers, is going to be saved in the variables on the left, which is stats, tills, buyers over here. The next instruction is creation of variable simulation time and number of tills. This happens in the ChangeSettings function. When we click on ChangeSettings function, let's expand this one, and what do we see? It initially assigns a variable simulation time 10, number of tills 2. Then we can see a bunch of print statements which talks about settings set for this particular simulation. It gives the predefined ones, and the next instruction at line number 50, as you can see over here, is an input function. So a user input is expected over here with a question coming up for the user on the screen. Do you wish to change the settings with a yes or a no? If the response to this particular question is a yes, the response of this particular input is stored in the variable answer, and if that answer is yes, then the user gets an opportunity to change these particular settings. If no, immediately the simulation time and number of tills which are set over here, 10 and 2, are returned back. Settings set for the simulation time 10 and tills operating 2, that was coming up from this ChangeSettings function. And the same simulation time 10 and number of tills 2 was passed on from this particular function itself. Let's have a look at what happens if we actually respond back with an answer yes. If I say yes, the user gets an opportunity to input simulation runtime, which is what we are seeing. Simulation runtime default is 10. I'm okay with 5. Enter, and that simulation time is going to be stored in this particular variable. Max number of tilts is 5. Number of tilts in use. So the author over here is giving us a situation where we can choose between 1 to 5 number of tilts. So let's say I want to select 4 tilts, and what do we see over here? The max queue length was 0, max wait time 0, 4 buyers arrived during 5 time units. The average wait time was 0 because nobody had to wait. Quite a lot of tills for 5 buyers. 4 buyers did not need to queue, and there you have it. So you can see nobody had to queue, and everybody were all the 4 tills were serving all the buyers which were coming in. So buyer number 1 came in, number 2 came in, number 3, 4, all of them just kept on coming in and got served. Now if the answer is yes, first maximum simulation time is mentioned to the user. The maximum simulation time is max time, which is a variable which is set to an integer of 50, which is set over here. If at all that needs to be changed, it can be changed, but it's just giving an idea to the user of what is the max time allowed. So the max simulation time is 50. Then the user gets an opportunity to enter that. If the user has entered anything more than that or less than the simulation time, which is 1, then maximum simulation time is 50 time units. So again, another warning. Actually, we can consider this as a warning. A warning is given that it has to be somewhere between 1 to 50, and another opportunity is given to the user to try to enter the simulation time again. Similarly, for the max tills, an instruction which is max number of tills, allowed tills, it should have said. The author should have actually said it. A max number of allowed tills is, and the max tills which is mentioned over here, which is 5. An opportunity for the user to fill the number of tills with an input number of tills in use. If the user adds anything apart from the user needs to enter anything between 1 and 5. If the user does not, if the number of tills is bigger than 5 or lesser than 1, then another warning is thrown, which is reminding the user of the max tills which are allowed, and the user gets an opportunity to fill this in. Once the correct simulation time and number of tills is filled in, those values are returned back from the ChangeSettings function, and those values are stored in the simulation time and number of tills variables, which are going to be used through the rest of the program in the Q simulator.